Welcome back. Joining the conversation is Steve Schmidt, a veteran Republican strategist and an MSNBC political analyst. Steve, go.
Well, I thought what we saw today was extremely disturbing, Nicole. We see Donald Trump sitting there with his arms crossed like a dime store Mussolini, saying that an attack on the country is what is the result of a legally executed search warrant on his private attorney. And what he really means there is that anything that endangers him, politically or otherwise, legally, is in fact an attack on the country, that the leader and the country are synonymous. And that just goes to show the degree to which Donald Trump doesn't understand the United States of America. And it's because the United States of America is a nation of laws, where the rule of law prevails, and no person, even the president, is above the law. And so what we saw of him today is using the senior military uniform leadership of the country as political props while he goes on this disturbing rant, while at the same time speculating about the use of military force and sending America's fighting men and women into harm's way. It was a very, very disturbing performance. And per the Washington Post reporting, and I think is evidenced by his comments today, he seems unhinged. He seems off balance, and he seems unhinged and off balance at an exact moment in time where he appears to be contemplating military action. It was disturbing to watch him in action today. It was disturbing to see how he operates, but his reaction is obvious because this scandal has moved another giant step closer to the Oval Office.
So, Joyce, this comes back to your point about how Russia-centric you think Mueller's probe is at this point. He's basically outsourced whatever shady dealings Mr. Cohen was involved in. Speak to the significance of the New York Times reporting tonight about the follow-the-money investigation theory leading to more pots of money tied to more folks with ties to foreign governments.
You know, there's really no telling what investigators will uncover once they begin following decades of Trump transactions in foreign countries. The Justice Department has authority to prosecute a crime under a statute called the Federal Corrupt Practices Act, and that involves business practices in some countries where bribery is a way of life. It's illegal for United States companies to engage in that. There's been speculation over time that Trump organizations abroad could have been involved in that there could be money laundering. We don't really know where that goes, but an interesting opportunity for Mueller here is whether or not Michael Cohen will begin to feel some pressure and whether or not he might conclude a plea deal with prosecutors in the Southern District of New York that would give him a lighter sentence or lesser charges in exchange for cooperation with Mueller on the Mueller investigation. That's the real pressure point for Trump out of everything that's taken place today.
Steve Schmidt, try to marry up these two developments today. The bombshell that the president's personal attorney's home and offices were raided, another no-knock warrant. I think the only other one we know about was for Paul Manafort's computers and electronic devices and files. With the new reporting in the New York Times that Bob Mueller is following the money and finding that it leads to some pretty curious and interesting places.
Here's the analogy I would use, Nicole. It's a person who goes to the doctor and says, I'm not feeling well, and I have some stomach pain. And the doctor does some tests, and they come back and they say, we have some bad news. We looked, and what we see is cancer is everywhere. And in the same way, I think what the prosecutors have done is that the empowering of the special counsel, that they've looked inside the Trump organization. They've looked at this collusion issue. But what they found is there is corruption everywhere. Everywhere they look, from the former national security advisor who is implicated in a potential plot to kidnap a U.S. person from U.S. soil to transfer that person to Turkey, or sitting on the inaugural dais and trying to do a nuclear deal with Russian interests. And the people that have lied about contacts with Russians, the Russians that have been indicted, other people that have been involved in financial transactions with Russians, and who knows what Michael Cohen's role is in involvement is in the Trump Tower Moscow project. So we don't know what we don't know, but what's increasingly clear to me is anywhere you look inside this Trump organization, it appears to be dirty. For example, how is it possible that suddenly, on the precipice of a default, there's a $1.2 billion bailout for Jared Kushner's 666 Fifth Avenue? Where did the $27 million from the inaugural committee disappear to with regard to Melania Trump's friend? To say nothing of Scott Pruitt, to say nothing of the loans from Citi or Apollo Group in excess of $500 million to Jared Kushner, to say nothing of the Kushner organizations trying to sell access in Asia to the White House, or for the Trump organization to send a letter to the government of Panama saying that unless they get relief in the private business issue in Panama between the Trump Hotel and a Panamanian business partner, that it'll anger the president and there'll be retribution on Panama. So everywhere you look, there seems to be the stench of corruption, and I think this is just another piece of evidence and what we're going to see unfold, that before very long, the extent of the shambolic Trump organization's corruption and the dirtiness around this administration.
Steve Schmidt is just getting started, but we're going to hit pause right here. When we come back, an FBI veteran joins us next to talk more about today's raids on the president's attorney. That's next when the 11th hour continues.